Yesterday, Claudio Chiappucci gave the Italians a solo display that turned the Tour de France upside down. He crossed first over the summit of 4 alpine passes to be welcomed home in Sestriere at the end of one of the most memorable stages in the history of the Tour de France.
Do you think today's improved your chances of winning?
No, I'm just very happy to have won the stage. Very, very happy.
Will you recuperate for tomorrow?
Tomorrow will take care of itself. I think today was the most important thing.
Do you think this is an historic victory?
I think that's for others to judge. I've done my part.
Miguel Indurain tried and failed to catch the Italian, but he'd done enough to take over the leader's yellow jersey. Indurain left Gianni Bugno, the world champion, on the climb to the finish. Now Bugno must hope that the winds of change will blow again as he returns today to Alpe d'Huez, where he has won for the last 2 years.
As Greg LeMond now hits the front, 150 metres to go. Bugno's got his wheel, but Greg LeMond is sensing he wants this one. The Z team have been the team of the day, and Greg LeMond, the world champion, the Tour defending champion, gets the victory here. Or does he? Oh no, I think Bugno has snatched it on the line.
But is a third win on the Alpe his primary target?
No, I have no extra motivation to win. What's important is the general classification. This is a crucial stage in the race and I'll do my best, but my overall position is the most important thing.
This is Alpe d'Huez, the most famous staging point of the Tour de France in recent years, and again the meeting place of thousands of supporters from all over the world. The Alpe is ready for the final grand battle in the mountains, and the route to it could not be more difficult. The race reassembling this morning in Sestriere in Italy, with the first contact with the high Alps coming in France, the giant Col du Galibier. After that descent, they start the climb of the very narrow and very steep Col de la Croix de Fer. And after that descent, they begin the big showdown on the climb of Alpe d'Huez itself, where thousands of people await to witness the grand cavaliers of the Tour de France. It only looks a small village as we stand up here about 500 feet higher than the riders climb today, doesn't it? Yet Alpe d'Huez manages to absorb at this time of the year perhaps 500,000 people to welcome the Tour de France, which is really France's great sporting jamboree. Now, the first day in the Alps yesterday really did turn the overall classification upside down. We expected that, and the names we predicted are now at the top of the classification. Miguel Indurain struggled towards the end yesterday, but he did enough to take over the race lead in this year's Tour de France, 1 minute 42 seconds behind the hero of the day, Claudio Chiappucci. Gianni Bugno is third, but still over 4 minutes off the pace. The same 3 names that finished on the top 3 positions in Paris a year ago. And of the rest of the top contenders in this year's Tour de France, they all lost ground to Claudio Chiappucci and Miguel Indurain yesterday. One rider, unfortunately, wasn't in front of our French television cameras on that last climb up to Sestriere, was Robert Miller. He rode very, very steadily indeed. He's now up to his high spot of this year's Tour in 15th place. The other British rider in the race, Sean Yates, he's not a climber. He rode extremely well yesterday and finished well inside the time limit. 18 riders either didn't start or abandoned the Tour yesterday, and others were eliminated. One of the 3 eliminated was the great sprinter Jamaluddin Abdou-Japarov. One rider in trouble all day was the American 3-time winner Greg LeMond. He was alone on the giant Col de l'Iseran. He was riding over 15 minutes behind Chiappucci at this moment. By the end, he came in almost 50 minutes behind. LeMond, not surprisingly, was speaking to no one last night, but through a friend, we understand that LeMond has a sore knee, a bad back, and is seriously considering his options this morning. It's too early to know yet in Sestriere whether Greg LeMond will sign on. The control is still open. If he doesn't, it'll be a sad loss to this year's Tour de France. Well, it's quiz day here on Alpe d'Huez, and thank you for your thousands of entries you've either written in or phoned in. Well, just for the record, we thought we'd give you our predictions for the Tour today, but believe me, it's a very open race on the Alpe. I'll begin. I've chosen Pedro because he has known every emotion on the Alp. In 1987, he retired in tears when lying fifth, his morale shattered by the death of his mother. A year later, drawn on by her memory, he arrived to take the yellow jersey and eventually win the Tour de France. He remembers too the unselfish act of his teammate, Miguel Indurain, who paced him up the hill in the 1989 race and kept him in touch with the leaders. This year, Delgado has good form, but he's hampered by the success of Miguel Indurain. If the opportunity is there, Indurain would like nothing better than to see his friend Perico win this stage.
My selection for the winner at the top of Alpe d'Huez is Miguel Indurain. He knows the mountain well. Last year on the ascent, he was imperial, only being beaten to the summit by his nearest challenger, Gianni Bugno. He's won mountaintop finishes in the past, and with no Pyrenees in this year's event, I'm sure he'll want to make a move here. But apart from all that, I just feel he's stronger and more confident than last year, and everybody wants to win at the Alpe d'Huez.
Well, more out of emotion than logic, I'm going to go for the hat-trick man, Gianni Bugno. For the last 2 years, this mountain has been his, and both times he's won the stage from the eventual winner of the Tour. In 1990, it was Greg LeMond by the smallest of margins, and last year it was Miguel Indurain. So far, Bugno isn't having the Tour he'd hoped for, and I'm sure he'd be happy to exchange second today for first on the Champs-Élysées next week. But with the race now perhaps slipping away from him, I'm betting pride will spur the Italian to an unprecedented third consecutive Alpe d'Huez win.
And a somewhat nervous rollout this morning for the riders facing the long stage to Alpe d'Huez from Sestriere. In all now, 51 riders retired from the Tour, 147 on the line. And although Greg LeMond didn't sign in this morning, he'll be receiving a penalty for that later. He did, in fact, start the race, but the news is not good. The first 2 kilometers of the race, Greg LeMond fell behind the field. He was attended by his teammate, Gilbert Duclos-Lasal. And now, as we join the action on the climb of the Col du Galibier, Greg LeMond is 10 minutes behind, and they are saying that he might well abandon the Tour at some stage on this climb. We're looking down on a small group of riders. At the start of this climb, it was an attack, in fact, by Gianni Bugno, something of a surprise, and no reaction from Miguel Indurain. But since that attack, which includes Robert Miller, going off the front is Franco Coccioli. So the situation, as we look at the main field here, is that Coccioli is some 30 seconds ahead of Gianni Bugno, Robert Miller, Laurent Fignon, and 4 riders in that group. And also in that group is the Australian Neil Stevens. That's where we are. The main field is at 1 minute and 12 seconds, and the work being done, not surprisingly, by the team of Indurain, the Banesto boys.
Making a very good tempo at the front here. They're keeping the gap all the time around about 30-40 seconds. It looked, initially, it looked as if the break was going to go away very quickly. But Jean-François Bernard came to the front, and the rest of the Banesto team, and they're setting a good tempo. And I think at the moment, they're just leaving Gianni Bugno out here to stew a little bit, and it may well be that Bugno is committing a suicide attempt today, trying everything or nothing to win the Tour de France.
Here's Franco Coccioli, riding his first Tour de France, already into his 30s. And we thought he would challenge at some stage in this race. He's a very good climber. Well, his position overall now is 22nd at 22 minutes 31 seconds off Miguel Indurain. He's a candidate today for victory at Alpe d'Huez, that's for sure. But there's another candidate too, Robert Miller. Miller is riding very, very well in this year's Tour de France. He's now 15th, 17 minutes behind Indurain. He too could take advantage of his position now and to try and leapfrog away from this chase group and possibly get up to Coccioli a little later on.
Miller in excellent form at the moment. He's had a fairly easy start to the Tour de France, despite the fact that it was very, very difficult for everybody in the event this year. But Miller managed to take a back seat because he's had no pressure, no team commitments as he's had in previous years when he rode for Greg LeMond and had to work for a leader. He hasn't been the designated leader of his team, so he could be able to sit back. And he's coming to the mountains as fresh as is possible under the circumstances, so he may well be going for the big victory today at the top of the Alpe d'Huez.
Banesto riders, 3 in a row there at the front of the bunch. And Miguel Indurain, the third man in his yellow jersey. First day in yellow for him. He knows what lies ahead of him. He was second on this stage last year to Gianni Bugno. And Bugno trying to get time. He would have to go for a long attack, I think, Paul, to have any chance of recuperating some of this lost time.
Well, it's the only thing he could do. He wouldn't make up that kind of gap on the last climb of the Alpe d'Huez. He's 4 minutes and 20 seconds behind at the moment. and the only way to try and get that distance back is to go for a long breakaway attempt, because he knows if he leaves it to the final time trial, Indurain is so strong that he needs 3 or 4 minutes to advantage on Indurain before we get there.
This little group making another 10 seconds on the field, and there is the board telling the rider 45 seconds now from Bunyo. This is Coccioli we're looking at here. From Bunyo, those 4 riders 45 seconds ahead of the yellow jersey of Miguel Indurain. But this is a long climb of the Col de Galibier. We're approaching the top of the Galibier this year by climbing the Col de l'Autre, which in itself is a brute. There's Robert Miller, who has had none of his favourite Pyrenean climbs to really exercise on this year, and that's where he's won his stages in the Tour de France. But his form has been so good. This, I think it's true to say, Paul, is his last chance of a stage win this year. It's got to be done here.
Well, I think so. It suits him down to the ground. And one thing that I think Robert will be very happy about is the fact that the sun has come back to the Tour de France. It's been so hard those first 10 days with all the rain and the cold weather, which definitely doesn't suit the slighter riders, the climbers. They're so thinner, so much lighter. The cold weather really gets through to their bones. And this is one man, I think, who's really appreciating the sunshine today, Coccioli. One of my favourites for this year's Tour de France. If we looked about it 2 weeks ago, he's been a little bit further back than I thought he would be. He's about 22nd position at the moment, some way back, but a fantastic attacker and really going to go for a good long one today. He's moving away from the Gianni Bugno group. The time check coming through is he's 40 seconds clear of that group now.
Well, he had a marvellous mountain win in the Tour of Italy in June. He's a past winner of the Tour of Italy. He finished 3rd in that race this year. He is an excellent climber. Early on, he was actually putting in a bid for the King of the Mountains, but after that ride yesterday by Claudio Chiappucci, there's nobody else in the competition now. He's earned so many points. He picked up 150 mountain points yesterday by going over the top of every climb in the lead. So Chiappucci richly deserving his King of the Mountains title this year.
However, the man second place or third place in the competition is Coccioli. So if he does a similar move to Chiappucci yesterday, he'll start moving back up into that competition as well and increase the disputing there.
What's this? Miller is down. This has been a crash. Well, we don't know how this has happened.
They've gone round the corner there. There must have been a touch of wheels. Gianni Bugno went down. Robert Miller's gone down. And I will think we'll see Laurent Fignon waiting for him. I don't know how that happened, but it could well have been just a touch of wheels or a spectator who was too enthusiastic coming round the corner and they touched them.
Well, we're seeing Coccioli go over the summit of the Col de Galibier. There's a lot of exciting talk on Radio Tour at the moment, but I don't think anybody quite saw what happened there. But it was either a touch of wheels between the two of them, because the angle of the virage, the bend there, the corner, is so steep, they may well have touched wheels. But it could also, of course, be an over-enthusiastic spectator who's straining himself to see the riders coming around the corner. Miller's certainly down, and just ahead of him, Gianni Bugno. That will have destroyed their rhythm.
Well, it really will. They will have lost 15 or 20 seconds on that, which will give Coccioli a good chance. Here is Laurent Fignon. He's obviously waited for Gianni Bugno. He's going to try and get him back into his rhythm, but I'm sure that will shake the world champion quite a bit. Robert Miller is no longer there, and I would presume that Neil Stevens is somewhere in front.
Well, there on the legs of Miller, just coming into our pictures, he fights to get back on terms. Well, that reminds me of the crash last year when Greg LeMond was knocked off by Gianni Bugno's car. And that is the most unlikely crash I've ever seen in the Tour de France there. The world champion on the floor, as in fact his teammate Fignon takes him over the top in second place, 46 seconds down. Bugno goes over in third, Miller goes over in fourth. In fact, Paul, I haven't seen Stevens. There is the chance, of course, he has gone over ahead of that little group and the cameras haven't taken him. And we can see that crash again here. Robert Miller on the deck. The spectators looking a little bit stunned. One of them, in fact, pushing away Bugno. Here's another chance to have a look at this. Well, there's no evidence from these pictures how the spectators caused them to crash, but the official communique is saying that is what has happened. So the riders now on the long descent of the Col de Galibier. Robert Miller is back with the group. Here he is, just coming on. And in fact, they've picked up Franco Coccioli on this descent. So we now have 5 leaders heading towards the Col de la Croix de Fer. Franco Coccioli, Neil Stevens of Australia in the pink here, Laurent Fignon, Gianni Bugno, and Robert Miller. We'll take a break. And welcome back. The conditions are still very hot and sunny as we're now on the second big climb of the Tour de France today, the Col de la Croix de Fer. Well, the descent of the Col de Galibier brought up the leader Miguel Indurain, and shortly after that there was a general regrouping at the front, and the field started the Col de Croix de Fer in a bunch of some 55 riders. But since the climb began, and this is a massive climb, it climbed steadily for 30 kilometers, this breakaway has formed. The man that made the first move was Eric Boyer of the Z team, and he was quickly joined by Jesus Montoya of Amaya. That's the little pink rider on the front of the group here. Franco Vona, who was second yesterday. Andy Hampsten of the United States, and Jan Nevens, the rider who won in Koblenz his first stage of the Tour de France almost a week ago. Well, let's have a look at the stats this morning, because there were 147 starters, but there have been 4 retirements now, and I'll give you some more information on that in a moment. The average speed today, very quick indeed, 35.170 kilometers an hour, keeping us well on course for the fastest tour in history. The overall leader of the tour, Indurain, his first full day in yellow. The polka dot leader, Claudio Chiappucci, with a massive point score after yesterday, 318 points. Still a good battle for the green jersey. Johan Museo currently wearing it with 182 against Laurent Jalibert's 174. But the news to bring you straight away is that Greg LeMond has abandoned the Tour de France. The first time in his career he's given up this great race. He gave up at the feeding station at Saint-Jean-de-Maurienne at 103 kilometers when he was some 20 minutes behind the race, and with him his teammate Gilbert Duclos-Lassalle. They were behind the race from the first mile today, and they never saw the bunch from almost the moment the flag dropped. That really is sad. Greg LeMond rode his first Tour de France in 1984 when he was third, second in 85. Then he won it 3 times, 7th last year, and today his 7th Tour will be the first time he has ever given up. And another man in trouble on this very climb, the Croix de la Fer, is Gianni Bugno, the world champion. We saw him attack on the Col de Galibier. Well, he was in all sorts of trouble and looking terribly tired halfway up. He fell back. With him was Jérôme Simon of the Z team, and in fact Bugno is being paced by his teammate Rondon. But the good news is he has got back into the chase group, which is including Miguel Indurain, the race leader, and Claudio Chiappucci. That group is 36 in number. And Paul, what's the latest time gap?
Well, the latest time gap on this group of 5 riders is 1 minute and 38 seconds. It's actually starting to move clear. There's no main pressure on Miguel Indurain at the moment, apart from the fact that Andy Hampsten could be the man to make the best move today, because he's lying in 8th place, 11 minutes and 16 seconds behind Indurain. But if this move can go away, Hampsten can move a lot closer up the overall classification, because 1 or 2 riders like Stephen Roche is suffering today, Laurent Fignon is suffering today, so Hampsten could move a lot further forward. We get an attack here going at the front. I didn't see who it was because of the little picture break. I think it was Franco Vona trying to move clear there.
And just look at this, we've gone back, and Bugno is in trouble again. This is the second time on the climb of the Croix de la Fer. Bugno is falling back, and Rondon again trying to look after him.
Well, Rondon's job today will just be to wait for him and try and get him back into the group, try and pace him back once they go over the top of the climb, but he really is having a horrendous day today.
Gianni Bugno, the winner at Alpe d'Huez the past 2 years, and the way he's riding right now, he may not see Alpe d'Huez, because he looks to me as though he is in terrible difficulty here on the climb of the Croix de la Fer. The world champion, Gianni Bugno, apparently cracking in the Tour de France, and this was not expected. He was the man who set off by launching the attacks today, as indeed he was yesterday, but he hasn't had the strength, Paul, to continue.
Well, he hasn't. He may well have used too much force in that early attack, trying to surprise Miguel Indurain. In fact, what they were saying earlier this morning was his team manager told him to attack early in the stage today to try and get rid of Indurain, because he thought that Indurain had cracked towards the end of the stage yesterday, and it may well be Indurain's weakness. But I think that was totally wrong, and he may well have spent too much force trying to get rid of Indurain, and now he's paying the cost.
And Indurain still with the strength of some of his Benesto riders around him here, setting the tempo on the climb. 2 minutes and 20 seconds is the time check. There it is, of the small group up front on the yellow jersey group, the Maillot Jaune. But Indurain just sits here and taps out the pedals. I don't think he's even aware that Bugno is hanging off the back of this group.
I don't think he's even thinking about it. All he's thinking about is just keeping at the front, keeping out of danger. And looks like Richard Virenque on the left-hand side of the picture there, who's actually really changed rider since the start of this Tour de France. He's got his jersey ripped open at the moment. They all have full zips for when they ride in the mountains, because it is so hot climbing up here that the riders just try to get as much air as possible onto themselves to try and keep cool, and then they'll zip it up for the descent when they're shooting down at something like 50 miles an hour.
So the riders heading up towards the top of the Col de Croix de Fer now, high in the Alps. Little bit of a surprise that Jan Nevens is here, but the rest are recognized men of the mountains. Andy Hampsten here dropping back, but I think only to speak to his team car, which is trying to get a word in his ear. They are building a lead of just on 2 minutes, so they're losing a little bit of ground to the chase group of Miguel Indurain. But the big news is that Gianni Bugno is riding almost 90 seconds behind Miguel Indurain on this climb.
It really is devastating for the Italian, because he thought he could challenge Miguel Indurain all the way to Paris. And yesterday, I think he must have been very upset to lose so much time. Today, he came out of the blocks straight away on the second climb and tried to attack him. And he cracked now today, and he's way off the mark. He's about 1.5 minutes down. And I think the way he was going the last time we saw him, he'll be a lot further back.
And the crowd almost as deep here, in fact, as it was at Sestriere yesterday, when the Italian police had a little bit of trouble in guiding Chiappucci to the line. But look at this. The Carrera banners are out again. That's Chiappucci's team. But he's not in this group. They've managed to tame him, for at least for the moment, in the Tour de France. He's back in the Indurain group, riding alongside him. He's now, of course, second in the Tour de France. He's got more responsibilities to think of than perhaps going for a stage win. But as the riders now hot up the pace, Eric Boyer is leading them up to the summit of the Col de la Croix de Fer. And this is a nasty climb behind them now.
Well, as they come up to the top, they'll go over the top with a good lead. They've got to race down the other side, go along the valley, and then in front of them is the climb of Alpe d'Huez. As we come up to the top here, you see the people handing out the newspapers. The riders will put that through their underneath their jerseys. Boyer going up in first place. Second was Hampsten. Third was Franco Vona.
And all the leaders over the top. Fourth was Montoya, fifth was Jan Nevens.
Absolutely incredible piece of work here being done by Julian Gorospe. He's ridden nearly the whole of this climb at the front without looking to anybody else to help him. He won't even be thinking about the Alpe d'Huez today. All he can think about is keeping the tempo high enough for Miguel Indurain to stay there in comfort and try and nullify any attacks. And the pace that he's setting, nobody really wants to attack, because it's going to be very uncomfortable.
Gorospe brings up the main chase group in the Tour de France today. 5 men are over. Gorospe will go over in 6th place. Gorospe, in fact, Chiappucci's just nipped in front. He won't give up those King of the Mountains points. He's taken a few more there just to make sure of that lead, but it'll be a big surprise now if he loses his lead in the King of the Mountains. He has such a good overall margin. So the crowd here will be treated to the spectacle of riders coming up for probably the next 40 minutes or so. That's if they don't block the route, of course, but that looked to me as though one of the VIPs was being dropped off on top of the col. The descent has now begun. Well, it was on the descent of the Galibier when Miguel Indurain successfully led the group across to the leaders. There's a man who doesn't waste energy. He just pegged them on the way up, and he raced very quickly with a number of risks on the way down to cross the gap using a minimum amount of effort. I wonder now if he'll do the same on the descent of the Col de la Croix de Fer. But I don't think the importance is really there now, Paul.
Well, it's not the same breakaway there was away before with Gianni Bugno in the front on the Col of the Galibier. That was more important to him. Now I think he'll let one or two of the other teams make the tempo, but he'll stay near the front to avoid any dangerous corners, to avoid any crashes in front of him, because that has got to be his biggest worry now, getting to the bottom of the Alpe d'Huez without any difficulties.
And this is Elliot Breukink coming up, and he too has been dropped. We make him just about a minute and a half, also off the back of Indurain, so Breukink losing more ground as he goes over the top of the tide. 3:47 on the leaders. More importantly, a minute and a half conceded to Indurain, and Bugno is yet to come over the top. Well, if the gap builds up much more than that, I'm not so sure that Bugno will have the a chance to get back onto that lead group on the descent, although it is a fairly long way down. And look at this, here he is, the world champion, Gianni Bugno, just about seeing him through the crowd here. Helped all the way by Abelardo Rondon, his teammate, who's paced him every time he's been dropped off the back. He's bringing him to the summit now, almost 4.5 minutes behind the race lead. But more importantly than that, he's going to concede over 2 minutes to Miguel Indurain, and he's going to have to put in now a spectacular descent if he's going to get back into this Tour de France before the last big date with the Alps comes up, and that's the climb of Alpe d'Huez. Bugno over the line there, about 40th or 45th position. We make him 2.5 minutes behind Miguel Indurain. Bugno's hands in his pockets, and he's now preparing for the long, long descent away from the Col de la Croix de Fer. As he races down to Bourg d'Oisans, he still has something like 40 kilometers, most of it downhill. He could get back.
Well, he could do. 2.5 minutes is a long time, and as you can see, the pressure is not on at the moment in the front group here. He may have the chance, if he makes a very, very quick descent, to get back in there, and he's got a little bit of the valley road before we get to the Bourg d'Oisans and the final climb of Alpe d'Huez.
So we can see there the yellow jersey taking no risk this time on the descent as he did on the Galibier, because the man he wanted is now 2.5 minutes behind him, Gianni Bugno. These are the leaders as they head now towards the next big rendezvous of the Tour de France, the Battle of Alpe d'Huez. Will they still be ahead when we get to the bottom of that climb? We'll know after the break.
Welcome back. Now, after 186 kilometres, the crowds, the heat, 2 major cols and the climb up Alpe d'Huez itself, these riders might be forgiven for thinking that all the obstacles of this stage were behind them. But not so. I'm 500 metres from the finish, and this is the quality of the road surface. It's not only melted, it's been completely chewed to pieces. And this is what the riders face when they get to the top of Alpe d'Huez.
Well, that's something else the riders have to worry about. But first of all, they'll be concerned now with the climb of Alpe d'Huez. They've just turned out of the town of Bourg d'Oisans. It's the same leading group. They stayed away on the journey across from the Col de la Croix de Fer. Here's a chance to look at the peloton. They are in the town now. They are just on 3 minutes behind. Jean-Francois Bernard here from Benesto, keeping the pace on for his team leader, Miguel Indurain. But the news is that Gianni Bugno is back in this group after a long chase over the valley, but we've had no news on Stephen Roche. So Bugno is back, and now he's going to have to go through all that pain again, Paul, as we start the climb of Alpe d'Huez.
We're really going to have to see if he has recuperated. He had a very hard chase to get back, 2.5 minutes behind at the top of the Croix de Fer. But there hasn't been that much of a chase in this group here, because the 5 riders in the front are actually increasing their lead. At the bottom of the Alpe d'Huez, they had 3 minutes and 50 seconds lead, but now the battle is going to start.
Andy Hampsten in the centre of our picture. On his left in the white jersey is Franco Vono. He's on the right as you look at these pictures now. Hampsten in the middle. Eric Boyer once finishing 5th in the Tour de France. Hampsten himself has finished 4th. At the back on the left is Jesus Montoya, and the rider just to our right behind Hampsten is Jan Nevens. They are the men today trying to take advantage of the other battle for the yellow jersey, and Andy Hampsten could be moving himself right up the overall classification with this ride today. If he can finish it off now with a great ride on the Alpe, Hampsten could be in the top 4 or 5 riders by the end of the day.
On top of that, this has got to be a stage really tailor-made for Hampsten. The stage that he won earlier this year, which actually helped him to win the Tour of Romandy, was the finish at the top of one of the big mountains there in the Romandy area of Switzerland. He really has been in his past a magnificent climber, but today he's done a lot of work in this group to try and make sure they pull back as much time as possible. Let's hope he's got enough left in those legs to try and do something later on. But the attacks will certainly come as we get onto the steeper part of the climb. There, the gap has come down a little bit, 3 minutes and 57 seconds.
Well, it's hovering more or less the same as they come onto the base there, Paul. But you have ridden up Alpe d'Huez on a number of times in the Tour de France. Perhaps you can remember the pain.
Well, I can remember the pain. It's something you never actually forget. The riders here on the first part of the climb, which really is hard. You've used a big gear all the way down the valley, and then when you get to the Alpe d'Huez, that first corner you have to climb up to, it is just changing from from the biggest gear on your bicycle to the smallest gear on your bicycle, and it really is painful, especially for a rider like I was. I was never a climber, and these riders, they must be going through torture.
And so it's the big man, Jean-Francois Bernard, who rode a similar great ride up the Alpe a year ago for Miguel Indurain, positioning himself again on the front.
Definitely the one Banesto rider there who'd done his job. He went to Miguel and said, Miguel, that's it. I can't do any more. Good luck, my man. We're going up the first part of the climb here. It's very, very steep. You climb up to the first corner, which comes back on yourself. It would say 21 corners to the summit. And there, Indurain sliding back down the group a little bit as Jean-Francois Bernard remains at the front, setting the pace. On his right shoulder, Claudio Chiappucci, the hero of yesterday's stage.
There's Robert Miller moving to the front on the inside here. Robert, who was on the attack on the Galibier, but the formation of the group at the front then wasn't the right one, unfortunately for him. Now Miller still has a chance. 4 minutes, you know, is not a lot on a climb as steep as the Alpe, and it's certainly closable on this climb. Chiappucci is moving to the front on the left of our picture. They'll be happy to let Bernard set the early pace on this climb. It starts very, very steeply indeed. It zigzags every 150, 200 yards or so on a hairpin bend back on itself. And after about 7 or 8 minutes of climbing, the houses in the village of Bourg-Blason simply look like anthills. The 4 survivors of the breakaway on the climb of Alpe d'Huez now, and still Andy Hampsten is setting the pace as he has done since his climb began. We're about 11 kilometers from the summit of the Alpe right now.
Could be very dangerous for him doing all his pace setting. Maybe he's just thinking about moving up for the overall classification, because Eric Boyer now is taking a back seat, and Boyer is an extremely good finisher, and he's won 2 stages in the Tour of Italy at the past at the top of climbs. Here Miguel Indurain's group coming up to the 10-kilometer mark. All the time the pace being set at the front by Claudio Chiappucci.
Chiappucci, that's Tönnissen on the far side. When he came up here as a stage winner, he was wearing Chiappucci's polka dot jersey as the King of the Mountains champion. The first time we've really seen Tönnissen in this year's Tour de France. He's had a poor tour, but he'll be inspired today because many, many thousands of the people waiting on the Alpe are from Holland. They traditionally come here. And the Dutch riders, having won half of the 16 climbs over the years on the Tour de France on the Alpe, today is the 17th time we've come here.
I think a word from Chiappucci's team manager there saying, come on now, don't forget, Miguel Indurain is the leader of the Tour de France. Don't do too much. Try and save yourself, because if he wants to and you do too much work now, he'll blow you away the way he's done to Gianni Bugno. And the 2 riders at the front who've been setting the pace since the bottom, Andy Hampsten and Franco Vona, are moving clear. Boyer rocking his head a little bit now.
Well, this is absolutely amazing, but Boyer has gone now. He was the man that started this move. He was the man that launched the attack. Hampsten spotted it and went to him. And now Andy has only to lose one man, Franco Vona, but I don't think he'll find Vona so easy to shake off.
Definitely not. Vona riding exceptionally in this year's Tour de France. But now Vona realizes that Hampsten has got a lot of force left in his legs, and he's dropped back a little bit. He's probably going to try and shelter from the American for the next few kilometers. But Hampsten really, to be sure of victory, will have to try and go alone, because Vona really is a good finisher. Now you see he's done exactly what I thought. He's slipping into the slipstream of Hampsten, letting Hampsten setting the pace.
Well, Hampsten isn't setting the pace, Paul. Hampsten is driving away. Andy Hampsten is riding superbly today. The rider who came in the 1985 Tour de France, 1986 Tour de France rather, when he finished 4th at Best Rookie. I remember the following year he didn't do quite so well, but I remember Davis Finney, the former US champion, saying to me then, one day Hampsten will win the Tour. Well, we've waited for that day, and we are still waiting, and it won't be this year either. But Andy Hampsten is riding as well now as I've ever seen him race in his life before. And still Claudio Chiappucci riding slowly on the mountain now, and I think he has slowed down. Nobody is willing to attack this man because they're all tired. They'll be glad to see the end of the Alps today. Indurain only has to follow Claudio Chiappucci, and all of the time now Andy Hampsten is ahead, and with every pedal stroke he's picking up time which may not just win in the stage here today, which would eventually could pick him up a place in the top 3. Andy Hampsten looking very, very cool, Paul.
Well, he's not showing any emotion at all. He doesn't look like a man who's going to crack to me. Really getting into the rhythm, really concentrated. He's coming up now to 4 kilometers from the summit. What an incredible ride by this man. I think he's going to be a very happy man tonight if he can pull this victory off, because he really has changed. It may well be the birth of a new Andy Hampsten, a man who's been looking for himself over the last few years, and he really is starting to get annoyed with these spectators trying to get into the road. He's very scared about what's happened earlier on today. I think he's scared about the crowd getting too close, and they really are putting him off his rhythm.
Hampsten now 3 minutes and 32 seconds, and he's inside 4 kilometers from the summit. 30 years of age, Andy Hampsten from Boulder, Colorado. This is Franco Vona, who finished second yesterday. At the moment, he's destined to finish the same again today. And that is a tremendous performance in itself in these 2 severe days in the Alps. 5 kilometers to go. 1.5 kilometers. That's about exactly a mile, I would say, between Hampsten and this group here. And surely that's enough.
Well, that distance on a mountain like this is round about the 3-minute mark still. So the chasing group here looking around, I think they want to know what's happening behind, but they really haven't got the will to chase. They've had such a hard day fighting each other that they're not too worried about Andy Hampsten. Hampsten up at the front here, I think, was really perturbed by the people getting onto the road there. He's perturbed. It really puts a rider off when people run alongside here. An American supporter there, being very, very dangerous. He's getting too close to Andy Hampsten's back wheel. He could even knock him off.
Well, there's a Swiss man carrying the American flag alongside Andy Hampsten, but he's been pushed out of the way as Hampsten makes his own way up to the summit now in this one of the most romantic stages of the Tour de France. Everybody would like to put on their honours list when they retire that they won a stage of the Tour de France on the climb of Alpe d'Huez. Indurain now prepared to set the pace alongside Chiappucci. He'll be feeling very, very confident of victory in this Tour de France as these mountains finish today with Indurain alongside him, rather with Chiappucci alongside him, because in the time trials coming up, Indurain is better. But look at this, Paul. Chioccioli is in trouble.
Well, that's Greg. Miguel Indurain has waited until he was sure that there was going to be no attack from Claudio Chiappucci, and he's gone to the front himself now to put the hammer down. And the pace that he's now setting has got rid of Franco Coccioli, who looked a threat for some time. But all the time, this young man from France here, Richard Virenque, has managed to stay in contention, but they're dropping back a little bit now under the pressure of the pace set by Miguel Indurain at the front.
Well, Virenque is doing the ride of his life here as he hangs on the back. And Ternisse, surprisingly, has also stayed at the back. He's made no effort to attack. And look at this now. The crowd's getting a little bit too enthusiastic. Indurain looking across at Chiappucci. I'm quite sure that Chiappucci will have said something there to the spectator who was actually trying to reach Indurain. There's the Spanish flag flying. And what a proud man. He looks down there as he comes up towards the top of Alpe d'Huez. He rides with the same composure we always see. His face never gives anything away. But let's go to the man who is now making this stage of the Tour de France so great today, Andy Hampsten. He started at the bottom with 5 riders. He's dispatched them one by one back towards the yellow jersey of Indurain, and now he's heading towards the top. The only one who is persisting is Franco Vona. We mustn't forget, Paul, that yesterday Vona came back past Indurain and took second place. He might come back yet as we get towards the top of the Alps.
He may well do as you get to the top of the Alpe d'Huez and you get into the town. There's the gap, 32 seconds between Hampsten and Vona. It's not an awful lot because when you get into the village, of Alpe d'Huez, it starts to flatten out a bit. If Hampsten's gone too early, Vona could come back. But the acceleration of Miguel Indurain there has got rid of Gert-Jan Teunis, and Richard Virenque jumps back onto the back again. Teunis is the man who wanted to win here. He loves the Alpe d'Huez. He's won here before. He regards it as his home territory, but he couldn't follow the speed set by Miguel Indurain at the front here.
You can now see the top of the Alpe, and so too can Andy Hampsten. For the last half of this climb, he has ridden alone. His face has told us nothing, but there looks now to be a little bit of pain there. That was the last rider to be dropped. Here he is, Franco Vona. He's about half a minute behind, and I don't think even he will spoil the day for the United States on the Alps today. 2 kilometers to go for Andy Hampsten. The crowd are now safely locked behind the barriers. All of a sudden, there's space to breathe up here.
Well, Hampson getting to the easiest part now, looking over his shoulder to see how far behind him Franco Vona is. He's just got to get over the top there, through the tunnel, and he'll get a little bit of respite. He'll be able to get a bigger gear in and head for the line. He'll be looking now for the last kilometre banner. Vona at 35 seconds at the moment. One other man in front of Miguel Indurain is Eric Boyer, but he's 2.5 minutes behind Andy Hampson, and these two riders are still round about 3 minutes as Indurain tries to find a way through the crowd. He fights his way to the top of the Alpe d'Huez, and almost certainly now I think Miguel Indurain will be the top man when we go to Paris.
I don't think there's much doubt about that now. He has proved himself by elimination of everybody around him that he is the best rider in this year's Tour de France.
Well, Hampson doing an incredible performance. I've just got another time check. He's actually 3 minutes and 55 seconds in front of Miguel Indurain. And Franco Vona here looks to me like a man who has really exploded. He can't get those gears over at all. He really is suffering. And Hampson is on the flat part of the course, picking up speed, and he's really flying towards a most incredible victory.
Andy Hampson has kept us waiting a long time for this great day, ever since he promised us big things back in 1986 when he won the Tour of Switzerland, and he went on to win the white jerseys, the best rookie in the Tour de France, when he also finished fourth. On that occasion, Greg LeMond was winning the Tour de France for America. Indurain, the man the crowd has come to see, along indeed with Claudio Chiappucci, this crowd balanced as Italians and Spanish supporters. And a little bit more regimented and orderly than the crowd we had on Sestriere yesterday. They have much more space to ride at their own pace, but they're not going to pick up. Indeed, they're going to lose more time, I think, to Andy Hampson. And Hampson is going to find tonight he will have closed the gap considerably. He started the day in 8th place, 11 minutes and 16 seconds down. A 4-minute gain today will move him up probably to 5th and maybe even higher.
Well, he's going to be very pleased with his day, but look at this man, Miguel Indurain. He doesn't seem to show any emotion at all. He just sits there and pumps away at that bicycle. And Claudio Chiappucci, well, he's an incredible rider. He's fought all the way through the mountains. He's still fought today. But here is the red flag for Andy Hampson. He's got 1 kilometre to go to take that final stage victory, and I think he really will savour that, because for a climber, I think one of the best places in the world to win is at the top of the Alpe d'Huez, because it really is the king of climbs.
And the top two riders in the Tour de France also coming up here side by side. The polka dot jersey of the King of the Mountains this year, he'll win that for sure now. And alongside him, the yellow jersey of the Tour de France, worn by its defending champion Miguel Indurain. I think it's fair to say he'll win that for sure now as well. Franco Vona, the man who's been the big intruder in the Alps this weekend. He finished second yesterday, and he should hang on in there now and finish second again today. That's a magnificent performance by him. He finished 6th in the Tour of Italy. And the final few bends now as they head up towards the main heart of Alpe d'Huez, where an American is set to win for the first time ever on the Alps. Back in 1952, it was the Italian Fausto Coppi. And we've been up here 15 times since. This is the 16th time since 52. 17 occasions in all. And the French have only won up here on one occasion, and that was Bernard Hinault when he was riding home side by side with Greg LeMond in 1986.
Well, Hampson made an incredible ascent of this mountain here. The time gap on these two riders at the moment is 3 minutes and 30 seconds. He turns into the final straight. He'll see the finish line in front of him. He's got about 500 meters to go up to the top, and Andy Hampson looks to me as if he's going to take the most incredible stage victory of his life.
There is no doubt about that now. He's smiling already. Andy Hampson for the United States is coming home in the Tour de France. This will be a remarkable victory. He did it like a champion. He took the group over the Col de la Croix de Fer. He took them to the bottom of Bourg-Mazan, and he blew them away one by one down the mountain, and the team Motorola has their stage win as well. And Andy Hampson is all smiles as we look down the hill now to the next man home. The average speed today is enormous, 32.7 over 21 miles an hour, and all of these mountains in the Alps. After Franco Vona, we have the top two riders in the Tour de France. The Alpe again has made its selection. Miguel Indurain. And look at this, Chiappucci is going to take on Miguel Indurain here. At the finish line, Vona comes home in second place. 2 seconds on 2 cruel days in the Alps. And you can't do much better than that. I think it's unreasonable to expect him to win both days. And so in the last 150 metres, Franco Vona will remember his Tour de France as the day he took 2 second places on the 2 hard days of this year's race. A little check over the shoulder to make sure they're not coming up, but this time, Franco, about 1.5 minutes, I would think, before we'll see the finish of the other 2. And his legs are locking up on the climb. He tried to sprint that one out, but he couldn't. He had to drop it down the gear. 1 minute 17 seconds behind, and that only adds to the quality of the performance today of Andy Hampsten. Well, how ironic it is. We now watch the arrival of Eric Boyer in third place, so he's still ahead of Indurain. How ironic it is to see an American winning on the Alps today, on the same day that, sadly, Greg LeMond has abandoned his first Tour de France. Eric Boyer comes up, the teammate of Greg LeMond from the Z team, who nursed LeMond to the Pyrenees a year ago, and now has to assume the role of team captain of the Z team. He will finish today in 4th place, behind Hampsten, Vona 3rd place, I beg your pardon. And he finishes just 2 minutes and 8 seconds down. Here is the arrival now of the yellow jersey of Miguel Indurain, and he's going to take on Chiappucci. Chiappucci, I don't believe, will relax. He'll try and beat him in the sprint. As they come up towards the line, Chiappucci goes, this man never stops trying. He'll never concede any more than he has to. Chiappucci comes home now, and he'll be in 6th place today, I think, ahead of Miguel Indurain. And what a stage on the Tour de France this has been. A win for the United States, and in particular for Andy Hampsten, one of the nice guys of world cycling. And in 2nd place, Franco Vona. 3rd place, Eric Boyer. And here is Gianni Bugno sprinting up to the line. Every second counts, but I can tell you now that Andy Hampsten has overhauled him tonight, because he was over 7 minutes behind him this morning. And look at this, it's almost 9 minutes. It is 9 minutes since Andy Hampsten finished. So Bugno is now behind Hampsten in the overall race.
And so the result makes happy reading tonight for the United States. Andy Hampsten the winner, ahead of Franco Vona, Eric Boyer and Jan Nevens. Claudio Chiappucci comes in alongside Miguel Indurain. Robert Miller today rode well again to finish 19th, almost 7 minutes off the pace. Well, straight after the finish, it was a happy Paul Sherwin that was down and speaking to Andy Hampsten.
That's got to be one of the sweetest days of your life.
I tell you, it's all I've ever wanted my whole career, is just really good form and a good mountain to show it on, and can't ask for more than 500,000 people to cheer me on.
To win at the top of the Alpe d'Huez for a climber must be absolutely extraordinary. How did you feel with 500 meters to go?
I felt pretty good. It was downhill. You know, I rode my own tempo. I wasn't sure if I'd win today, because when the attack went, you know, we're all equal. It went, you know, in the lower part of the Croix de Fer, and I knew that today everyone in that group was pretty equal. So I wasn't thinking so much of winning the stage, so much as just really do my fastest ride on the way up. So I did tempo the entire way. You know, and about halfway I started pushing it, and I could see they're in difficulty. So I felt I could make to the finish and really gave it the stick.
But when you came on the scene, you were one of the most fantastic climbers, and you sort of disappeared for a few years, but now this year you seem to have changed. Your mentality's changed, your training's changed. What's happened to you?
Oh, I don't know. I think before I won a lot of races, just maybe I was a bit naive and had a lot of youthful enthusiasm. Now I'm an old dog. But, you know, I work hard. I've been training real hard. I've had a lot of disappointments, so anything that comes is a gift, and I look at it as a gift, and not, you know, I don't have a quota of races I win a year. Every time I'm in good form, I really have to make the most of it, and when it's a day like this, it's so much better.
And on the podium tonight, the face of Andy Hampsten, it hardly looks as though it suffered the pain of the last 2 days in the Alps. Now let's have a look at the overall situation. Miguel Indurain still 1 minute 42 seconds ahead of Claudio Chiappucci. Andy Hampsten is now into 3rd place, 8 minutes and 1 second back. Pascal Lino stays 4th. The rest of the men drop further and further away from Miguel Indurain. Well, first of all, I must apologise for my voice, but I guess the excitement of the day has taken over for me. Behind me here at the clock, 55 minutes has ticked by. We know of 10 riders at least who will now be eliminated from this year's Tour de France. Again, the Alp has played its part in more ways than one. Well, out on the course today, Robert Millar and Gianni Bugno, that collision was caused, in fact, by the spectators, and Millar ran into the back of Gianni Bugno. And Bugno wasn't slow in telling the crowd exactly what he thought. Our quiz first. Well, there were almost 10,000 entries today for our competition, and thank you for those. But 500 of you named Andy Hampsten as the likely winner. And the winner is David Moon from Bideford in Devon. Congratulations, but you all must have had an inspired vote today. The race goes on as we leave the Alps now, and to summarise a great day, Greg LeMond, the former 3-times winner, out of the Tour today. He retires at the feeding station. He wore the big number 51. It's won more Tours than ever before. It won't win this one. Andy Hampsten is our winner, with the leader of the Tour de France looking very solid. This race now leaves the Alps, and tomorrow we go to St Etienne. Gradually the mountains will recede and the flat roads will return. Sorry about the voice, but I'll be back tomorrow, and so will Gary and Paul. Goodbye for now.